This is the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
We are TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome to Phoenix Rising Radio. Now is the time to lift your mind higher. Now is the time to rise above. I am your host, Phoenix, and welcome to tonight's broadcast. Hope you guys are doing well. This is Thursday. Oh, excuse me. Pardon me. It is Tuesday, October 31st, 2017. Oh, yeah, it is Halloween evening here. And I have a special announcement. We're going to have a special guest on this evening. But first, I want to bring in NeSe, who's on the line. Hey, NeSe, how's it going, brother? Hello, NeSe. Huh. For some reason. Hello, NeSe, are you there? Okay, well, technical problems. We can't bring NeSe in. It's the second time I brought him in to the switchboard here. I have no idea what's going on with that. But please be advised, we have a special guest coming on at the top of the hour this evening at 8 p.m. That will be Laura Walker of the Oracle Report. Laura just contacted me right before the program, just a few minutes before, to let me know that she has a special alert that she wants to give out to everyone. So I would suggest to everyone listening to have pen and paper so you can make some notes of what she may say, because something happened today in New York and she has an alert about something else about to happen also. So you want to be sure and hang on. She'll be joining us at 8 p.m. Eastern, which is the beginning, top of the second hour this evening. NeSe, are you with us here?
Ooh, I am the ghost of NeSe.
Yeah, you're a ghost, all right. You're like a ghost trying to get you on this thing. You were coming in with some technical difficulty. I'm not sure if you heard what I had to say, but we were contacted by Laura Walker of the Oracle Report right before the program began. And Laura has a special announcement for everyone she needs to share with us. And I'll remind everyone that Laura Walker of the Oracle Report here on Phoenix Rising Radio actually gave a heads up about the Hurricane Harvey. It was either 3 or 4 weeks in advance to the date. She gave us the time when it would happen, and she said it would be a huge event that would impact a lot of people, and she gave the exact location of it. And she did that like 3 weeks out. She's got similar information to share this evening, but it's much more critical and it's much more time sensitive. So I encourage everyone to hold on till the top of the second hour when we can bring more in, because this is very important information everyone needs to know. Before we get into Laura, though, and have her join us at the second hour, NeSe and I were going to talk about Halloween tonight, All Hallows Eve, and the traditions of this and different stories. And we'll do that and occupy this time. You know, NeSe, there's so much stuff going on. We don't even have to make up scary stories, man. There's just like all kinds of crazy things happening. With that, before I let you speak here, I want to tell everyone this isn't like an Orson Welles thing. When Laura comes on this evening to share what she has, this isn't a prank, people. This is the real deal. It's not an Orson Welles War of the Worlds fake narrative. This is the real deal. But anyway, so what's up, brother? What do you have to say about Samhain?
Well, we are getting all spooktified here in the house. The kids have gotten their costumes gathered and getting ready to go and do the American holiday. Or is it? But
it's actually it is a Scottish and Irish holiday that stems from the ancient Celtic religions and time. So actually, it's not an American holiday. It was Americanized, but it's actually a Celtic holiday.
Well, in the conditioning of this day, where the manufacturing of the most deadliest substance on this planet known to man. You know what that is, Phoenix?
Sugar. That would be sugar, dude.
Sugar, yes.
Sugar.
So
oh my God.
Get those spasms of the possessions occurring as we let these demons enter us through our gullets and into our bodies, the demon of sugar. Boo! Boo!
You know, there actually is. That goes right along with, I watch very little television, as you know, but there is like a thing on the History Channel, I believe it is, called The Monster Inside Me. And it's like they cover like these stories of parasitic infections and disease and weird things like that. And it is kind of spooky, freaks you out. But Bob Gilpatrick of Boomers has actually shared with us before that people who have sugar addictions, there is a parasite that grows inside of people. And this parasite, these parasites actually thrive on sugar and the intake of raw sugar, and they release a gas within people's intestinal systems that makes it into the central nervous system and actually triggers the brain. And it's like these parasites are doing a mind meld with human beings' minds and cause people to crave sugar. And people are like, oh man, I've got to have something sweet. I just really want this cola. I want these whatever. And they eat, like a whole box of ding dongs or, cupcakes, and they don't know why they do it, but they're actually being controlled by the influence of a parasite within their system. And that's true, dude. They have proven that. Now, that's real Halloween spookery right there, man.
Well, absolutely. If you look at the definition of possession in itself, you will see that it's an entity that is compromise the body to cause uneasiness or dis-ease to the proper functioning of the body. So in technical terms, too much sugar is being possessed by sugar. And then if we break it down on what kind of field energy sugar has, if we were to able to measure it, I wouldn't say it would be very harmonic to the body. Now, I'm not saying maple syrup or honey, and sugars of those naturalness are bad for you. But like everything, as my elders have told me, when you put something into your body in a respectful manner, it will work with you and work in harmony in a symbiotic relationship. However, if you disrespect it and you put it inside you, then it will start consuming you from the inside. And I tell my kids about monsters and demons. And at one time, my oldest daughter, Infinity, I would say, who's the king of the monster? And she would say, George Bush. And I'm like, and where does he live? And she'd say, in the White House. And where do the monsters reside? And she would say, Washington disease. So if you really want to talk about some monsters. we can start talking politics too.
Well, the thing about it is, with the politics, it looks like they are draining the swamp. They put out the two sealed indictments. They unsealed them, with the Mueller investigation, and then they had the other confirmed arrest and guilty plea by the Papadopoulos. So that's 3. And it's been found out today, man, that there are additional 4 sealed indictments. Now, here's the trigger of this, and here's the bizarre thing. Over at 4chan, which is a famous internet site, they have some really good internet sleuths and intel people over there, but they have had a guest there known as White House Anon. And White House Anon has been confirmed to be somebody with real inside information. And he's posted many times on 4chan and broken information that no one knew about. And apparently he has set up a code with the operators, the moderators, owners of 4chan, so they can confirm it is him, because there's a lot of trolls and people, doing live action role playing and all that crap. But White House Anon came on recently and basically shared some interesting information. And yes, there are 4 additional indictments. Let me grab this 4chan info real quick. Bear with me. I'm going to run over to 4chan and pick this up really quick.
While Phoenix is digging up that 4chan, remember, if you're out there and you are having the kiddies go out for Halloween, make sure you keep a good eye on them and that they're always in groups of 2s and they're well lit up, and so they're visible in this time of darkness. And it's always safety first. It's best to be prepared. And this year with my children, the going rate for candy is 35 cents a piece. So when they go out there and they get this horrible candy, then I buy it from them for 35 cents a piece of candy. And then I put it in a dish for the adults that come and visit me, because they can make the choice of whether or not they want to poison themselves, where I don't think it's right for us to let our kids just go and poison themselves without knowing what they do.
Yeah, you know what? I found this stuff on 4chan. I'll share it. I was reading something on social media yesterday. It was pretty funny. People saying, like, what's the strangest thing you ever got in when you're trick-or-treating as a kid? One guy said that he knocked on a lady's door. She was slam drunk. And she's like, oh, I forgot to buy candy. She goes, wait a minute. And she comes back and puts a rotary telephone in his bag and says, there you go. He said he kept it for years. He was in shock. It's like a telephone. He took it home and he kept it. And he said he still has it. He's an adult, just to remind him. It was the funniest thing. But anyway, trick or treat. This is from 4chan. Came out this weekend. There's more to this, but this is basically info from the White House Anon. And this has been confirmed. He says, look, I feel bad. And again, I'm quoting from the White House Anon. You guys have been thrown off so much by the intentionally misleading breadcrumbs that no one has any idea what's been happening for the past 10 months. He says, so I'm going to throw you guys a bone. Forget the dossier. The real story is Uranium 1. And he goes on to say, 1, we've known that Holder was a covering up Russian bribes for Uranium 1 for a long time now. He says, hell, even Clinton Cash tells everyone about the bribes that they were taking place. The reason Mueller left the FBI was because he was fed up with the corruption and of the Holder/Clinton Obama. Holder kept telling Mueller to kill investigations. The reason Mueller left. He said, Holder kept telling him to kill investigations and bury evidence. He says, I don't know what you think about Mueller, but I can tell you he's an honorable man. The corruption of Holder/Obama/Clinton was eating him up alive. He resigned in 2013 when he couldn't see doing this. Then he got Comey, who was coerced into continuing the cover-up. 2, he says, Manafort, Comey, Rosenstein, Podesta, Clintons, Holders, and Lynch are all on one team. He says, we affectionately call them the Clinton cabal. To take this cabal down, we need someone who was close to the career FBI agents because they were holding all of the evidence. When the DNC and Clinton campaigns spun the Trump/Russian collusion conspiracy back in December, He says, we couldn't believe it. They gave us the perfect way to expose them. We would use the Russian investigation to expose the bribery/extortion racket, which continued through 2015. Wait a minute. He says it took place back in 2009 and continued to 2015. 3, we got Mueller to sign on to investigate the connection. We needed him because he had been at the FBI for most as long as Hoover and knew all the agents that were setting on the Russian-Clinton connection. More importantly, he hates, Holder/Obama/Clinton. He says the plan was to get the Special Investigative Counsel headed by Mueller and have the FBI agents hand over all the evidence. Unfortunately, we didn't count on Comey being such an obstacle. In the short time he was the director of the FBI, he had made many allies who were proven to be loyal to him. He had to go. We knew it would be messy, but we had President Trump fire him. It caused a lot of headache for us, but in the end, it was worth it. Mueller's been gathering evidence from his former agents for months now. He says, along with a raid to the Manafort and Podesta, we now have enough evidence to connect all the dots. Mueller also convinced the FBI informant to speak up. That's the one that was ungagged. He said getting the gag order removed was trivial. 4, and I'm almost done with this, we gave the Hill a heads up. We knew the switch in the narrative from the Trump Russia to Clinton Russia would take a little time. We had them to drop the Uranium One article exactly 1 week before we made the first arrest. A couple of days later, we dropped the dossier info. We needed to hammer the train. The first arrest will be of Manafort and Tony Podesta. He says these guys are not the real target. They are just the soldiers. The real targets are Hillary, Holder, Rosenstein, and John Podesta. We would love to expose Obama as well, but now dig this, Ney Sey, listen to this. He says President Trump is adamant about protecting former presidents, plural, even if they are corrupt pieces of excrement, but he doesn't say that, and I can't say it on the radio. He believes in the dignity of the office. He feels that ruining the legacy of a president will do nothing but hurt our country. This is why both Bushes, Clinton, Obama, and even LBJ will be spared. The rest of the JFK files released will not include the essential information implicating LBJ and Bush Sr. 5, and this is the last one. This is it. The final moves will take place over the next 4 weeks. They could have let this go. Honestly, President Trump wanted to get on with making America great again, period. But Hillary and the DNC just wouldn't let it go. They asked for this. They kept making up excrement, and now they're going to pay. He says if they kept their heads low and faded to obscurity, we would not have gone this route. And they have no one to blame but themselves. And I'm going to end right there. Now, that information, people, came from what's has been known as the White House Anon, and it's over at 4chan, and he has been proven to be the real deal. And I mean, he's been vetted by the people at 4chan, and he has put stuff out historically over the last year that has been 100% correct. I mean, stuff that nobody could have even guessed at, that went totally against whatever one was speculating about. I mean, he's given people heads up on the president letting people go, on people being indicted, on announcements that were being made, and he would put these out sometimes a week, 2 weeks in advance. So this information is interesting, especially since we just found out today that Mueller has 4 sealed indictments still on the docket. And the thing about it is President Trump and his team are very relaxed. They are anticipating the thing will be over soon, and there's no implication that they are implicated in any of this at all. So just wanted to give the heads up to everybody on that. That's some real Halloween madness going on. Now, this ties in too, dude, with something Laura's going to be sharing with us later, and what we see coming up this weekend on November 4th. Anyway, you have the floor.
Well, as the synchronicities continue to occur, and as you look at the moons and the positioning of the heavens, and you see how we're coming up into a full moon again, that It's interesting how they concur with each other. But do we want to? Where are we sitting with time, Phoenix? You want to go first with the ghost story?
You can go ahead. Let me check the time here. We have about 7 minutes. So go for it.
Okay. Top 3 ghost stories that I had. So I moved into this apartment above a tea shop in downtown, well, not downtown, uptown Minneapolis on Lyndale and 27th. And I moved into this little 1-bedroom apartment where I had to share the bathroom. And in the back hallway, after moving in, every now and then we would get that door rattle, the back door going down the hallway to where the bathroom was. And I would just think that, wind gust, whatnot, where the other tenant would be using that door to go in and out the hallway and, pressure change and that. And then this occurred for a little bit and then it stopped. And then all of a sudden, I started noticing a dripping challenge with my sink. And I am no silly man when it comes to fixing faucets and leaks and changing gaskets and whatnot and using my tools when I need to. And so I play with the sink. It doesn't drip anymore. So then I notice in a few days it's dripping again. And then all of a sudden I start looking for the pattern as I state all the time. Pattern recognition is the greatest gift that we silly humans or humane beings have. And I started recognizing the pattern. Every time that I would get stressed out about paying the bills or making ends meet or just getting stressed out in general, and this is as I started getting sick, the water would start dripping. And I started testing this where all of a sudden I would acknowledge to the universe that I understand it. I'm stressing out. And more times than I'd like to share has occurred. When I would make that acknowledgement, it would stop dripping. And this occurred for about the first year living in this apartment. And then I moved across the hallway. Oh, no. Oh, I love it when you get those reminder chills. So I move across the hallway and no dripping problem. I'm there for about a month. And then all of a sudden I get this kind of rattling on the door. And right away, within it going on for the first 3-4 days, it all of a sudden hit me and reminded me of the rattling across the hallway. And so then all of a sudden, sure enough, when the rattling stopped, within, I'd say 2-3 weeks, when the stress factors started hitting up again, drip, drip, drip. And now this drip has followed me for the last 22 years. That where my faucets, when I get stressed out, I apologize for the doorbell ringing. It's probably trick-or-treaters starting. But yeah, to this day, when I get stressed out, my faucets will drip. And when I acknowledge it, they stop dripping.
Wow. I tell you what, it's a ghost story, but it's not. It's a spirit story. And that's the energetics and the energies that we live in and surround us. I'm telling you, we have more influence on our environment than we realize. That's why it's so important to not be fearful, man. That because if you're hearing a faucet drip, this is when people's valves start to drip in their heart. When people get stressed out, that's when they get heart disease. That's when they start to get sick and they get at dis-ease. And dude, what you're sharing with us is a spirit story, but a spirit story that affects us all. And we have power over this, and the universe showing you this, that you could stop that drip by basically not being fearful and trusting in source and trusting in God and the universe. I mean, that's a valuable lesson. And, little things like that happen to us. But man, we have so much influence on things outside of us. more than we realize. I mean, wow, that's a cool story because it's a teaching story too. And man, you got to get that drip fixed. Say no to that fear and stop that drip.
Right. Well, now I wish I would just get past my sugar fixation, and I went and had myself one of those specialty sugar coffee drinks today, and I apologize to the audience. My nose starts getting a little drippy every time I introduce that sugar into my body.
Oh yeah, man! I tell you what, too, those specialty coffees. Wow, that's crazy. We know. I knew a woman who drank that stuff. She had like a special creamer and stuff. Man, she put on so much weight, dude. It was like, you know, how do children gain weight when they're babies? They nurse, right? This breast milk that's really rich, and they drink these sugary drinks all day, especially the warm ones with the coffee, and it's jacked up with like all these flavors like caramel and chocolate or peppermint. And man, people drink this stuff all day. I mean, I can't imagine what the caloric content is in some of those specialty lattes. It's got to be off the chart.
Well, to not to diminish how bad I did do it, because I did do it. I am a hypocrite, as I've said before. I do have an espresso maker. And so one of the gals that come in to help me with my daily living activities, she used to be a barista. And so she would whip it out in my machine, which is reverse osmosis water, inorganic soy chocolate. And yeah, so I at least do it in the organic sense of it. But cool. There is a little bit of that raw sugar cane in that soy chocolate.
Hey, man, we'll come up on a break.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
No hate, no hype, no fear. Real people, real radio.
There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
Blah, blah. Welcome tonight on Halloween, October 31st, 2017. It is I, Count Vlad, with Phoenix Rising and NeSe. For all you trick-or-treaters, let me drink your blood, but please be sugar-free.
Not bad. Pretty good, Vlad. That's a pretty good imitation there, bud.
Oh my God, I was channeling. No, sorry.
It was the parasites in you crying for sugar.
Right? That's the gas they just released.
Oh, man.
Okay, can I first clarify, as a Anishinaabe descendant, we say Manitou. And Manitou is a word that we use for spirit, but it also means mystery or unknown. And so we kind of lump it all together, where it's kind of like, you know, it could be this, it could be that, you know, do we really know? You know, we can make our hypothesis, and I believe at some point when we become that union with the Creator, then we might be knowing, but who knows? Not me.
Yeah, so true. And tragically today, we haven't mentioned it yet this evening, was a terror attack here in the United States in New York City today. As you know, a gentleman by the suspect, his name is Sayfullo Saipov, I believe, entered the U.S. through a diversity visa program, which is a lottery for countries with few immigrants in the U.S. And this gentleman actually rented a truck from Home Depot. And there's been found a manifesto in his truck that he rented from Home Depot. It's being analyzed by the FBI right now. I believe 6 people have been confirmed dead, possibly more. He rented this truck and drove over into the bicycle lane where people ride in New York City. It's actually a curb, a little medium there, and drove for like 9 blocks, I guess, at speeds up to 45, 50 miles an hour, hitting every bicyclist he could. And he came up on a large group and hit a bunch of people. As like I said, 6 confirmed dead right now, multiple injuries. And then his school bus jumped out of the truck after striking the school bus with 2 weapons. They were non-lethal. They were like toys. One was a paintball gun, one was a BB gun, actually, and he was screaming Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. And he was shot by the police and has been taken into custody. And it is being called a terrorism incident because that's what they've been doing, using vehicles as weapons. And, you know, we're talking about Halloween and everything. Now, again, a reminder, if someone came on late, at the top of the hour tonight, 8 p.m., roughly 25 minutes here, we're going to have Laura Walker of the Oracle Report will be joining us. Laura contacted us just before the program to say she had some special information she needs to share with everyone. It's time sensitive, and it's a heads up. It's an alert of something that could potentially happen. And it's related to all of this and what happened today. And I want to remind everyone, and if you haven't, or you're not familiar with Laura Walker or the Oracle Report, she has oraclereport.com. And she actually came on Phoenix Rising Radio a while back, about 3 to 4 weeks before Hurricane Harvey hit, and actually gave the exact date and timing for Hurricane Harvey. And not only that, but exactly where it would hit, and said it was going to be a large incident that was going to be very damaging and take lives. She wasn't sure what the incident was, but she nailed down that it was an incident and the exact location. And she has something like that to share with us this evening. So just a reminder, and be ready for that. It'll be at the top of the hour. Now, Ney Sey, you're talking about a full moon coming up this Saturday, and that is true. It's going to be Saturday, November 4th. Now, Saturday, November 4th also is a call to arms day for Antifa, the anti-fascist, and they are calling to disrupt the entire United States on November 4th, and they have called to action attacks all over the United States in major cities, and they're telling people that they're going to attack and kill police officers and emergency responders, people like that. That's how they're going to start. And they're hoping to start a civil war, a revolution, an uprising in the United States. And they said they will not stop, and they'll continue to build until the government of the United States resigns, the sitting government. Now, there is a gentleman who just came out with a book, and this guy used to be an author for the New York Times. Let me see if I can find his name here. And this guy put a book out just recently, and he started talking about it recently, and this is for a reason too, so it'll be fresh in people's minds. And his name is Ed Klein. And what Ed Klein is telling everyone, he's been making the talk show circuit, he has proof that the Antifa groups and other leftist groups here in the United States of America during the G20 summit last spring actually went there and linked up with Al-Qaeda and ISIS affiliates, and they are coordinating with ISIS and with Al-Qaeda to fight the Trump regime. And he is actually saying that they have been getting weapons and explosives from ISIS. Now, we also saw a call go out from Antifa this week telling all of its members to show up to these protests on Saturday the 4th, and that they should disguise themselves as Trump protesters, or not Trump supporters, and dress like policemen. So they're actually telling people to impersonate police officers and to show up to these things wearing red Make America Great Again hats and carrying like Confederate flags, and to attack people that way. So it makes makes it look like to the media that the attacks were done by Trump supporters. And this is interesting stuff, dude, because if all of this is a fraction of this is true, and this plays out, and I have to say it's the deep state's last gasp at trying to disrupt what's going on at draining the swamp. If there's even a fraction of this is true, there's going to be the possibility that the President of the United States could activate the military, possibly declare martial law, and declare Antifa a terrorist organization and actually go after these guys and have them arrested.
Oh, the webs that we weave in order to deceive.
I know, crazy stuff, dude. This is insane.
I don't want this scary stuff. I want our scary stuff, Phoenix. This is getting too real.
Why am I scaring you? Boo! I told you. Oh man, you asked me earlier. I'm going to leave that topic right there for when Walker joins us at the top of the hour. You asked about one of my ghost stories. Man, I have so many. I have so many weird, unusual things that have happened to me in my life that, oh man, I could write a book about it. And some of them are pretty intense and private. I don't want to share them. And but I've seen UFOs, and I've had very strange supernatural encounters that have happened, and absolutely freaked. And it wasn't just me who saw them. Almost every single time someone was accompanying me or near me or witnessed this happening also, and totally blew their minds also. I think one of the weirdest ones, well, they're all a lot of weird ones, but one I will share. Years and years ago, I had moved into a house near the beach with a buddy of mine. We just both got out of the Army. We're both from the Ranger Battalion. Same battalion. I believe we were, same company also. Anyway, we ETS about the same time. So we shared a house on the beach, and this bizarre occurrence happened. I came in, the beach house was up on stilts, right? And it was an old house built in the 20s. And there was nothing in between it and the ocean other than these dunes that were like covered with like briars and stuff and been well maintained. And I walked in and the door was locked. And my friend was sitting on the couch and he looked startled because the door was locked, and he jumped up and he looked scared. And he goes, "Was that locked?" I'm like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "What's wrong?" He goes, "Dude," he goes, "I got to talk to you outside," because we had other people with us, and asked, because I got to tell you something. And we stepped out on this big wraparound porch we had that was screened in, and he goes, "Something happened." I'm like, "What?" And we had these little dogs, because we shared the house with other people. And one person had a little dog, and this little dog had run down like the row of beach houses there. And he had went to get the dog, and he goes, "There's something under this beach house." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Come here." And it was like 2 houses down from our house, and it had lattice. And you could see in the lattice and see that there was nothing under the house. It was just like, on this old stilts. And he goes, "There's something under this house." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "There's something growling under this house." And when it's like up off the ground, like 8 feet, right? So he goes, "Come here." We walked up to like the lattice of this house, and nobody was in the house at the time. And it was like this deep guttural growl. And I mean, it was like right there. And there was nothing there. And I'm like, man, the hair stood up on my arms. Like, okay. And we walk in. I'm like, "That's weird." He goes, "Oh yeah." He goes, "It totally freaked me out." He goes, "There's nothing there." This is broad daylight too. I mean, you could see nothing. And I'm like, okay. And we're like, we're not going to tell anybody about this. We don't want to scare anybody. Well, a couple days later, I come back home. Same thing happens. Door's locked. He's freaked out. Daylight. I'm like, "What's happening?" He goes, same thing. He went out. He goes, "Dude," he goes, "you remember that sound? I'm like, yeah. He goes, it's here. I'm like, what do you mean it's here? And we're standing on this wraparound porch. It's like 10 feet off the ground and it's screened in. He goes, like, right here. And he points at the screen. I'm like, you mean down there? He goes, no, dude, right here. He goes, I heard that growl right by our screen. And that would be like 10 feet off the ground. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, that's weird. And that's when it started. We would be sitting there at night watching TV, and like the bedroom door would open and then it would close. And the door on the house, it was like a deadbolt lock. You could walk in the door and close it and immediately turn around and try to go out, and it would be locked. And there's no way you could trip the deadbolt without it going chunk, chunk, like making this loud sound. It would silently change position and lock with no sound. And then we had the incident. We were sitting there, and there was these 3 little puppies in the house, the 3 small dogs. They all jumped up at the same time, ran to the bathroom, which was sitting there. It was dark. It was like right off the kitchen. The door was open, and they start freaking out and barking inside the bathroom. And we're like all looking at each other. There's like 3 of us sitting there like, okay. And then they come out right in front of us into the living room in a circle. And all these dogs are looking up like they're looking at a person, and there's no one there. And they're barking and barking. And we're just like freaking, like, what the hell? And all of a sudden they all yelped. All 3 of them wet themselves, peed all over the floor, and ran yelping and went underneath one of the beds and wouldn't come out. And we're like, okay. And there's more to this. I could tell you hour of stories from this place and what happened. But yeah, we've seen some pretty amazing things. I mean, verifiable in front of other people.
Nice. How about, what time do we got? Number 2? Story number 2? I got my top 3, and then maybe at the very last of the hour, I'll give you my top one. But this is my second one then. If maybe anybody out there in the chat room, if you're listening to it, if you go to downtown St. Paul and you look at the James J. Hill House, so-called founder of St. Paul, Minnesota. And if you look right down the street, there's 2 mansions right down the street. I was fortunate enough to live for a summer in this mansion. I had a dear friend of mine who was the nanny/housekeeper, and the people that owned the mansion were in France for the summer, and we were planning to be roommates in the fall. And my lease ended early, and she's like, well, why don't you hang with me in the mansion for a couple months? And I'm like, absolutely. And so this was a beautiful mansion, had a pool house, probably I want to say like 8 baths, and just huge. Well, the rule was we had to go through the servants' entrance, which is this very steep stairs that went down by where the coal chute was, and it went into this huge iron door. And then from that door was like a mud room, and then a hallway, and another door, and another door, and a hallway, then the stairs, and then the door at the top of the stairs, and another hallway. Needless to say, you would have to go up 3 floors and all the way to the southeast corner, which is the room that I picked to stay because it was an empty room, had this beautiful arch window that overlooked downtown St. Paul. So I threw a futon on the mat on the floor, and I could lay down and I could wake up and go to sleep looking at the downtown St. Paul skylight. It was an incredible summer. Fondest memories. Well, one night I'm sitting up there in this room, and mind you, there's probably about 12 doors, maybe 14 doors from that big, huge steel door all the way up the stairs to my room. So I'm up late reading, and then all of a sudden I hear this bam, and you can hear this big steel door reverberate throughout the mansion. So this door slams, and then you hear this bam again, then bam, bam, bam. And it started quickening in pace. And if you would think of the time it took you from opening the big door and closing it and going to the hall and then closing that door and the next door and going up the stairs, the speed that the doors were slamming were increasing faster than humanly possible to get to the next door. So it says bam, 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 bam. And it got, those, I love those goosebumps. Makes you feel alive. And so up in the top floor, on the third floor where I'm living, there's 3 doors to get to my door. And so it says bam, bam, and then it stops just before my door. So I'm staring at the door, and all of a sudden I realize right behind me is this big window. And I remember The Exorcist, where the guy gets thrown out the window. And so I dive into the corner of the room.
Okay.
And I put my back up against the corner of the room, and I'm just staring at the door, and nothing happens. Nothing at all.
I'm sorry to laugh at you, but I can see that. I mean, why? Right? Because I remember that scene. He's like thrown by the demon, through the window, and to his death. Oh my gosh.
Yes. So I'm sitting in the corner with my back up into the corner, and I reach over and with my foot, and I grab the cord to my clock radio and pull it over to me, and I turn the music on, to try to calm myself. And I'm sitting there, nothing, and I'm scared to go out the door. Scared, literally. I mean, this is after the military. I get out of the military, 230 pounds, and I'm almost 5'11". I'm a big boy, big native shoulder boy. And I was scared, was not going to go out that door. So it seemed like forever, but it was maybe 45 minutes, an hour. All of a sudden I hear bang. And then I just started tensing up again. But then I hear my roommate and her boyfriend giggling and laughing.
Oh, no.
And so I yell, and I'm like, Carol! And I yell for her. And so I hear her and her boyfriend coming up the stairs kind of quickly. So she gets to the door, opens up the door, and she must have saw the expression on my face, because the minute she saw my face, she said, "Did you see the ghost?" And I said, "What?" She's like, "Oh yeah, the place is haunted." And I'm like, "Really? You couldn't tell me this before I moved in?" And she was like, "Well, I didn't think you would care." And I'm like, "Well, you're right. I didn't care, but it would have been nice to know." So apparently this house is haunted, and Carol's roommate, or her boyfriend, he actually saw her, because she used to sleep down in the basement. And one night, while he got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, he passed this one room, and he stepped past it, and on your peripheral vision, he thought he saw something. And so he said he passed it and stopped and took a step back and looked in the room. And he said across the main floor, where it went back to where the old coal chute was a woman in this old kind of nightgown with the old kind of candle with the glass around it. But you couldn't see her from the knees down. You couldn't see nothing. But from the knees up, you could see this translucent. And she was walking across the room in the opposite direction he was going. And she stopped and looked at him, and then looked back and just kept going.
Yeah. I'm telling you, there's an energetic thing going on there. I think a lot of that, that activity is almost like, it transcends time. And we're tapping into these things, and some of it could be these indelible energies that are released in crystalline structure, like stones and all of that, almost like CD, like something being burned on CD, that at certain times are released. But some of it, I think, is it's something that transcends time. And whenever you have an entity, a spiritual entity, appear that they're aware of your presence, you could actually be witnessing someone who's looking across time space. Because I tell you what, dude, before the internet, before TV, before radio, people had a lot of time on their hands to think, and they were more in tune, and they weren't distracted as much. And you had a lot of people that tapped into the ether. That's where your great writers, inventors, all these really brilliant people tapped into something before radio. And, that's what the creation of radio and all these things. So possibly when this apparent spirit looked at him, it could possibly been a time space connection. And what he may have actually witnessed was this woman, when she was actually physically alive in that time frame in the 1800s or whenever it was, early 1900s, and she was actually walking across that room, and she energetically felt his presence in the future and looked in his direction. Whereas if somebody would have been with her, they'd have been like, what are you looking at? And she could have actually energetically sensed him standing there and his energy in the future, kind of like remote viewing in real time. And that energetic is so strong that people will actually see people who pick this stuff up, and they will be energetically manifest before their eyes. That's just one of my theories on it, because I think it's multifaceted.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a great hypothesis, and I would strongly agree to that, because you've heard me discuss before the Holy Trinity of the dichotomy, or the field where you got positive, negative, and neutral. And then if you look at the fourth dimension of that 3-dimension, you could say white, black, gray, and the absence of them all. So then you get to the fourth dimension, which is like that unknown, that clear sphere. If you would image it as like spheres, like a black sphere, a white sphere, the gray sphere, and then you got the clear sphere. And this is where we talk with the Anishinaabe when we talk about the 4 parts of our being: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And with all of those fields, when you start thinking of the fields, when you're looking at positive and negative energy, and you look within the neutral, and within the neutral, in that absence of everything, you find electricity. And this is the spark that we need to find within ourselves when we find that balance in the meditation, because when we do tap into that inner spark, then we are able to do what you were saying, remote view, or manifest back imaging, into the future or into the past.
Yeah. Something just came to mind. There was a movie that kind of touches upon the hypothesis I gave forward about looking through time. It was called The Others, and it was about spiritual entities that were living in a time, kind of locked in time, as a mother and her children who actually she had murdered. And they were encountering these strange people in the house. And what there actually it ended up being was a group of mediums that were there, and these mediums were encountering them. So anyway, but you know what? One correction, everyone. I said earlier that 6 people had died. I got a heads up from Lucky at TFR while Ney Sey was sharing that with us, that there were 8 people who were killed in today's terrorist incident in New York. Now, also, we'll be back in just a few minutes. We're rolling up on a break here, but Laura Walker of the Oracle Report will be joining us right as we return, and she's got special information to share with us. Don't go away.
Truth Frequency Radio is your...
You are now tuned into the Truth Frequency.
We are TFR. TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome to Phoenix Rising Radio. Now is the time to lift your mind higher. Now is the time to rise above. I am your host, Phoenix, and welcome to tonight's broadcast.
Back, everyone, the second hour of Phoenix Rising Radio here this evening on Truth Frequency Radio, where truth is premier. And I please hope that you are supporting the truth. If not, go over to truthfrequencyradio.com, go to the Phoenix Rising Radio listener page and find out how you can support the truth and get full access to high definition downloads of all of our programs, all the archives, and access to the same for all the wonderful hosts and great programming you'll find right here on Truth Frequency Radio. And don't forget, you can listen in by iHeartRadio, TuneIn, or just by visiting truthfrequencyradio.com and listen live. But as I had promised before the break, we have a special guest this evening joining us with a special alert and special information, and that is Laura Walker of the Oracle Report. Laura, are you with us this evening?
Hi, Phoenix. Hi, Ney Sey.
I don't know where Ney Sey is. I know he's with us, maybe back on the line, or has himself muted. But
I'm here. I'm just muted. I just was letting you talk. I'm sorry. Hello. And happy Sheepoween.
Indeed.
Did you guys do your jack-o'-lanterns? I just went in. We have our jack-o'-lantern lit. I did a small one this year, but we're not doing the party. We don't do the parties, but I always do a jack-o'-lantern because it's my Celtic roots. I must do this because it is Samhain, and we don't need any of the evil coming near it.
I did do a jack-o'-lantern, but I did it a little too early, and it's kind of shriveled now.
Oh, man, I'm a cheapskate. I do my jack-o'-lanterns right before Halloween, and I do them that way because before Halloween, a pumpkin is like $10, and right before Halloween, lo and behold, it's $3 because they have a store full of them. They want to get rid of them. I'm like, I'll take one. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Well, it's just crazy that here it is Halloween and coming on with everything that happened today when, we were talking earlier about what I had found in the astrology. And I guess coming on and giving an alert, I guess that's really what it is. But it's really knowledge. It's just a little bit of information because knowledge is power. And certainly don't want to incite or add to any of the fear that is probably already going on around all that's being built up with November 4th with Antifa and what they're saying that they're going to be doing. And so that's really how I got on the search this morning, earlier this afternoon, before the event in New York City. I was looking at the astrology for Saturday, which is the full moon, for November 4th. And just to give the backstory of that, was looking at where potential places would be where there could be some kind of event or some type of activity. And that showed out very clearly. But then what was interesting is after the attack in New York City earlier today, right after that, I went to the astrology, went to the computer and pulled up the chart for that time in New York, because when we have the time and the location, the latitude and longitude, we have a lot of information in astrology. And it was very interesting because the pattern that was showing out for Saturday, November 4th, was in fact the same pattern that was in play at the time of the event today, which is why, this really prompted me to say, I think, I probably should talk about this a little bit, not to make people afraid, but just to provide some information. And maybe even by talking about it, who knows, if we meditate on it, maybe nothing will happen. And I'm not saying anything is going to happen anyway, but just wanted to report the data. So that's kind of the backstory, Phoenix, of how that all came about today.
Well, I mentioned to everyone this evening when I came on, just a reminder to everyone who listens and maybe to new listeners who aren't familiar with you that you did this, and there's a term for this. You'll share that with us in a moment. You actually did this about 3 or 4 weeks prior to Hurricane Harvey and accurately predicted that there would be an event on that date at that location. And you did that live right here on Phoenix Rising Radio. And again, it was 3.5 weeks in advance you did this. And it's the same method that Laura's sharing with us tonight. And again, like she said, it's not to scare people, it's to make people aware. But just be advised, this isn't something she's new to, and she has proven her accuracy on this type of skill. And because it's an observable skill in the past with great detail with Hurricane Harvey. So I just wanted to remind everyone of that, Laura. And this technique of melding a location, a longitude, a latitude with these astrological events, what's the name of that type of technique?
Well, all of astrology will use the latitude and longitude, but when you have that information, you can add on an element called astrocartography. And what this does is it superimposes or overlays an astrology chart onto a map anywhere in the world. You can pick the whole world. You can look just at the United States, wherever. And it's really uncanny how, well, it's really not uncanny. It's really just the modus operandi of the Illuminati. There isn't anything spooky or mystical at all about it. It's just mathematical because it's all based on math with astrology. But, I'll be going on to 9 years with the Oracle Report in a couple of months here. And over that time, I've basically become kind of a forensic astrologer to deconstruct when things happened, find what the pattern that they were operating off of was, and then applying it. So I've gotten to know, and I've gotten used to their signature. It's almost like profiling, I suppose, within criminology. So yes, the astrology chart is one thing entirely, but then when you can look at the astrocartography for it, it's a mouthful of a word. It's just very clear because the different places or different cities are where the highlighted activity. So we could say there's a higher potential for some type of activity, some good or bad, really. It's just energy is focused on specific places at specific times. And if you have some data to go by, to look at in the past, you can apply it to the present or the future. So it was one thing when I discovered where things were potential and, on November 4th, but then to see it, an event happen and see that same pattern, that's something that I pay attention to because that's the source field showing out the information. Mm-hmm. So let's first talk about November 4th. So anytime I look at anything like this, and it's really, basically we'll just kind of reverse engineer all of this. The first question you ask is why now? So the question of why November 4th, because that's really what I'm talking about here. Why November 4th? Well, we know it's the day that Antifa has deemed their day of revolution, their violence, and it's based on a loose interpretation of days, not strict, of the 100th anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution, which technically would be November 7th, would be the 100th year. Yeah. But we're in that window, obviously. But what else? Why would they pick November 4th, Saturday, instead of November 7th if they were going to play along with that? Well, there's a few reasons. Number one, it's the full moon. And so anything that's done on the day of a full moon is going to have the fullest amount of power. And really the night before, the eve before, the day before, the full moon is just as powerful. We've come to see, and which fits into all of the ancient pagan practices and whatnot of the eve of something. But it's also a Saturday, which makes it a really good day for people to be able to organize to, do anything, right? People are off work. I don't know how many Antifa people work for anyone other than Soros, but
that's a real stretch there, Miss Laura Walker.
I think any of the day of the week would be fine, but why? Why Saturday? Why not November 7th,
Well, you know why? I think I know why, because people, the average citizen
Yes.
is, and not confined to their office space.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so you can inflict more terror because people will be out. So when I went first earlier today to look at the astrology for the full moon for November 4th, and looked at the astrocartography to see where places that they might strike, because they're saying they would strike multiple places around the country. Well, there's one place and there's one city in the country that's highlighted above all the other ones. There are a few of them highlighted, but there's one that's a primary focus, and that's because the full moon basically is happening right over this place. This city is Atlanta, Georgia. It is where the full moon is happening and where all the energetics are pointing for the most significant highlight, you might say, the biggest neon sign for the day. I would like to mention the other cities too. It's interesting because the cities where the planets are activating at the time of the new moon on November 4th are known to be liberally dominant cities. And these are Miami, New Orleans, Chicago, Austin, Texas, San Antonio, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Asheville, North Carolina. These are the places where there's most activity highlighted. Now, there's not a whole lot on that day. There's not a whole lot of activity in the northeastern corridor. There really isn't any kind of astrological activity happening there, but there was today, and it certainly was in New York at the time of the attack today. So these cities would be, where we would want to pay attention to. Now, the Sabian symbols are always what I look at, and that's really how I've been able to kind of track when the Illuminati faction of the New World Order plans events. We also know that on November 4th, in fact, I think it's over the November 4th through the 6th, the Department of Defense is they say they're going to be conducting drills about a CME that is released and impacts the grid, the entire grid of the country. Mm-hmm. And so there hasn't been a lot of talk about that. It hasn't really been mentioned, but we know that when they're operating drills, simultaneously, they oftentimes are doing something else. Now, the fact that it's a solar kind of event with this drill is interesting because the moon's nodes, what we call the north and south nodes of the moon, are aspecting the Eris point, which is the degree, 21 Aries, that I've identified as the catalyst for false flags that further the New World Order agenda. The north and south nodes of the moon are a primary way that human behavior is controlled. So whatever the polarities of the moon, whatever they're doing, they have a big impact on us. And it's not discussed a lot. It's more of a esoteric things for astrologers to talk about the moon's nodes. It gets kind of, there's a lot of imagery that goes along with it. And there's a lot of, it's very strange. Astrologers will talk about one thing and they'll call it a lot of different things. But the moon's nodes are discussed like in a lot of different ways. But the Sabian symbols that the energetic they will be discharging with the new moon involve the sun. One of them does, and that is the Sabian symbol for the north node, which is destiny in astrology. It represents destiny. The Sabian symbol is American Indians perform a ritual to the sun. So that's ritual energy already in there. That's, daily practice for Native Americans and others of us. And there's energy that's been imprinted on that year and year after year after year. So it's one that's been used before, I should say, for nefarious events. The south node, which is always opposite of the north node, is located at a large white dove bearing a message. And the other Sabian symbols that are involved all indicate that if these false flags are undertaken, if these violent events happen, what it will do, it will be terrorizing at the time, but what will happen is the boomerang effect that's happening with everything, meaning when that's put out, what comes back is just a collapse of the whole thing. You know, they were having a hard time getting these kinds of things off the ground without a lot of mistakes being made and a lot of evidence being left around that just shows the signs of what really happened, the truth.
The truth.
So
yeah.
so even if, you know, these things happen, it's going to quickly come out what really was going on behind it, who was funding it, how organized it was, and it's just going to hasten the demise of the cabal. They're imploding on their own, and they're fighting within their ranks for sure, and it's just going to make that all happen a lot faster, which is good in a way, but we certainly wouldn't want, you know, violence to be, you know, the method that's furthering awakening, but that's really what happens. Now, the Sabian symbols involved for the full moon are a young couple walk down Main Street window shopping and an embassy ball. So what does that we take from that? Well, I would take from that, if I was going to be in Atlanta or maybe in one of those other cities, I don't really think I would go to a shopping mall or shopping center specifically. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't believe we should live in fear, and I think we should live our lives, but I also think we should be prudent. And if there's information that comes out, well, let's just, you know, take that into account. Anyone living in Atlanta, you know, doesn't mean you necessarily change your plans. It means you might be aware and you're doing things a little more differently that day. But, you know, maybe not wanting to be in a crowd, you know, especially where there's, you know,
mm-hmm.
shopping going on, because that seems to be part of, you know, with the anti-fascism part. And then the embassy ball, you know, that this conjures some sort of a federal building, I would say. We could look at that with it. Now, as far as the grid goes in this DoD drill with the CMEs, it's interesting because Mercury, which rules the grid, you could say, which rules communications and all of that sort of thing, Mercury will be on that day discharging one of the favored degrees for the Illuminati to try and take some kind of control. And that is 28 degrees of Scorpio, which is the king of the fairies approaching his domain. And it's an energetic that they use to show dominance, to be the king and to take power over the domain. So that's interesting that it's Mercury there, and it, you know, with the grid, we make that correlation.
Mm-hmm. You know, let me interject right here. What Laura's talking about, this EMP drill, I pulled up some info on it while she was sharing with us. And for people who don't know, most people do who listen to Truth Frequency and Phoenix Rising, but on November 4th through the 6th, there will be a drill called Lights Out. And the Lights Out drill has military commanders will be practicing for a situation when the whole nation is plunged into chaos by a massive failure of the power grid. Officially, the drill is a response to a threat from solar storms and had been dubbed a very bad day scenario. But the exercise comes amid growing tensions with North Korea that they could launch an attack on the U.S. with the use of an EMP, electromagnetic pulse weapon. Experts have warned such an attack could kill up to 90% of Americans, around 300 million within 1 year, shutting down the power grid indefinitely. So that's what this is about, and that's what they're talking about. They're also going to be initiating the civilian mobile radio network nationwide. So it'll actually be up and running. And like Laura said, many of these drills that they've had in the past seem to have a habit of going hot. So anyway, please, I just want to interject that, Laura.
Yeah, I didn't know it was called Lights Out. Gosh, they get creative, don't they? You know, one of the other there's two primary factors that if the pattern today in New York that repeats on Saturday and November 4th, the Black Moon and Chiron are very much involved with this. The Black Moon is going to be in square to Chiron, and they're both square they're aspecting the galactic center. The black moon is at the last degree of Sagittarius. It's going to be leaving Sagittarius. So all the Geminis and Sagittarius listeners out there, relief is on the way. November 8th, actually. But the black moon is discharging the Pope blessing the faithful. Seen a lot of activity under that Sabian. And then Chiron is discharging the purging of the priesthood. So we have a lot of ritual elements in here, by the way. I should mention that Pluto has now moved back to 18 Capricorn. The Union Jack flies from a new British warship. So while Pluto is there again, they will try to make as many strides as they can to derail Brexit and to, maybe perhaps bring in a much bigger way the global agenda.
Interesting. I don't know if you saw this, but they have the British sex dossier that just came out, and Theresa May and her government are all upset about this because this strange dossier of sexual misconduct has hit the UK. And I find it very strange that this came out today. And it was about a week since Bill Clinton actually was in the UK and in that area and visited with Theresa May. And everyone thought, why was he visiting? Is this a coincidence that Bill Clinton would be visiting her and all of a sudden this unusual sex dossier hits the UK, shaking up her government?
Oh, wow. Yes, I didn't see that.
If I may add also, one of the things that I've looked into is when we have these new moons and these full moons, that some of the psychology of these, what I claim to be the powers that should not be, when they do these rituals and these ceremonies, when they do it at this time of darkness, yet there's the reflection of the light, the sun's reflection on the moon. So in this darkness, it's almost like a mocking, where these entities of evil are like mocking the sun, mocking the light within us by doing these rituals during the full moon time. And this goes with the whole thing of where they look for these cycles to do their rituals, because there is a greater power when you tap into the cycles, whether you're going to use it for good or use it for fear or evil.
Yes, indeed. Ney Sey, my education in the cycles came in a direct apprenticeship way. My teacher's teacher was taught by Sun Bear. It's lovely how that native wisdom has been held, all this time, and now it's coming out because the Illuminati know this. They know this information. The Mayan numerology, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that is the numerological system that they use. And it's the perversion of the wisdom, yes, indeed. And so my hope is that this discussion, even, to bring it to the light, is a ritual to the sun. The sun is the number one enemy of the archons. And when we talk about the New World Order and the Illuminati faction of that, the highest echelon of that, they are under the control of the archons. What John Dee termed, in the Queen Elizabeth time, the macrobes. This is this interdimensional intelligence that has informed certain humans of these spiritual laws, these codes of the universe that are being twisted. And so I see it as my job to point it out. And let's throw some light on it. Let's meditate Friday and Saturday and send some love to these cities, and especially to Atlanta, and move the field.
Right. And what Phoenix and I say time and time again about, not getting wrapped up in the fear. If somebody says to you, hey, don't go in that part of the woods because there's some panthers, that's just sound advice. Is your choice? Of course, you want to go deal with it, then by all means go deal with it. But if somebody gives you some caution, why? Are they giving it to you because they hate you? Most likely not. They're just wanting the best for your path in this experience. So it is it is detrimental sometimes to listen to these other people's advice, and I mean, take it with a grain of salt, because you have the end choice in it all, but you might as well do your diligence and make sure that you're being safe.
So true. We're rolling up on a break here, guys. And when we come back, I'm going to share something with you, Laura, I think you'll find very interesting, and our listeners, about Atlanta, Georgia. And oh yeah. And we're talking about the Illuminati rituals, and all these shenanigans that they have planned, and they're trying to use these energetics.
No hate, no hype, no fear.
You're listening to Truth Frequency Radio.
We are TFR.
There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
Welcome back, all ghoulies and ghouls. October 31st, Halloween on Phoenix Rising. Tonight with Phoenix, Laura, and that ghoul of a ghoul, NeSe. May you all have a spectacular and ghoulish Halloween.
And we are back. Oh my goodness, who was that? NeSe, who was that? Oh my God. Anyway,
Turn the channel. I'm turning into channel 13.
do not touch that dial. You know what? Before we went to break, I said I had some information to share with everyone. I would share with you, Laura, particularly about Atlanta. This is something that Lake found. I'll tell you about that in a moment. But I want to share with all of our listeners something. I'm going to read it really quick here, because it's been a while since Laura was a guest on Phoenix Rising Radio, and I wanted to jog everyone's memory, because we have come into a season. There's all kinds of things, the Uranium One scandal, all these things that are coming to light on all sides, and just this amazing stuff, the dumping out of the JFK files, which is like amazing that this information is coming out. And I just want to read something from Tuesday, October 10th, and this was from the Oracle Report. And Laura Walker wrote, Jupiter enters Scorpio. Jupiter pushes out of the bounds of Libra and enters Scorpio, ushering in a 13-month period of time, which will be from October 10th to November 2018. 13-month period of time when what is pulling down the collective of humanity is brought to light and vanquished. Jupiter will bring up the dregs of the underworld, and it will be quite a sight, given that we are at the end of the Kali Yuga. We need to prepare ourselves to process the ugliness that will come to light over the next year, knowing that the wound must be exposed and cleansed before healing can begin. And the reason I'm reading this and reminding everyone is because this is happening. We have seen, since she wrote this in the Oracle Report, that all this information is coming out, and there's going to be more. There's going to be more. And I'll let Laura address that and continue on with our alert tonight. But Laura, before you continue on this evening, I wanted to share something Lake found, because when you shared this information before the program, Lake, doing her, due diligence and detective type ways, she immediately jumped to Atlanta. She says, what's going on in Atlanta? And she's found something pretty interesting. She found an advertisement for a political meeting. It says, please join us for an evening reception in support of Stacey Abrams, who is the Democratic candidate for governor of Georgia. And this actually went out June 5th of 2017. And the interesting thing about Miss Stacey Abrams and this event that they were having there in Atlanta, it was going to be held on Wednesday, June 7th at the home of Alexander Soros, who is the son of George Soros, and he has a residence in Atlanta, Georgia. I thought you might find that interesting, Laura.
I sure do. Goodness, they're active, aren't they?
Oh yeah, Soros right there in Atlanta, Georgia.
Wow, that's a find. Yeah. Yeah, and I was wondering how much of the legacy he was going to take on from his father, because you wonder if they have the fortitude of their elders, that they've been so prolific with their work. Looks like he's taken right in there, isn't he?
Yeah, well, we know the Soros Foundation are the big funders of a lot of the revolution, the color revolutions, and remember the purple revolution that the Clintons said they were launching. Whenever it was declared that she wasn't the winner of the election, they all came out in purple, and it was going to be the purple revolution. And Soros is the funder of revolutions worldwide and has been known to give money to Antifa. And so since he's a primary, funder of Antifa, and your warning that you're putting out for Atlanta this weekend, I just thought that all tied in very well.
Yes, it does. And I believe, didn't he transfer funds to most of his fortune to his foundation recently? And he shorted right before the Las Vegas attack.
Yes, he did.
With that. Yeah, and I'm wondering if there's a little bit of rogue action going on there. He might be running a lot more of what we're seeing actually, happening now than even maybe some within the New World Order would even want.
Yeah, maybe
Nobody talks about the vice president. What is he doing?
Vice president, the current one?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, he's just a little character there. I could go on and on about him. Do you have something you know?
Well, no, it's always interesting. I mean, just ask yourself, how often do you hear about the vice president? This is just like when Daddy Bush was vice president with Reagan. You rarely ever heard mention of Daddy Bush. And this is what they have their games. They know what works. And they continue to use the same cycle of the psychos to continue their plan of action.
Well, one exception to that, though, I would say, and people need to realize that, and that's a good observation about Daddy Bush, Papa Bush, but Papa Bush had been the director of the CIA. So Papa Bush, and also there's a picture of Papa Bush outside of the book repository where Oswald shot Kennedy, and all that's coming out also. But Pence, not quite so. He's never been part and embedded into the intelligence community. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there, but it is a good observation, and it makes one wonder, what is going on behind the scenes. Something we all have to wonder about and watch. But, like I was saying before, this is all coming to a head. It's coming out. We're going to see more and more of these revealed, possibly things about Roswell, think about, Marilyn Monroe's death. There was some connection there with JFK. All these secrets are going to come out. Uranium-1, all this stuff. It's coming out. And there's some pretty heavy times. Anyway, I want to, again, devote the time to you, Laura, to share with us what you may have. We have like 19 more minutes this evening.
Well, along the line of what you're saying, this lunar month in particular is, it's special because, first of all, it's the month of the year that's like a month-long full moon phase. So all month we have a little bit of that full moon fever energetic just naturally in place. It's the middle of the year, and it's the time when it's the magical time. It's a lot of spells and everything that kind of comes along with the full moon. So it's the entire month is very active. But interestingly, the energetics of this month are very much about second chances and renewal and things that have kind of maybe gone cold or, were just kind of went away for a little while. Big stories even will find resurgence, which has already started happening. So the new moon was on October 19th, and then we had all of the Weinstein, all the Hollywood scandal, and now, moving on into the pedophile Hollywood pedophile, and how that ties into the global ring. This systematically is desensitizing everybody to be able to handle where it's all the bottom of the rabbit hole is and what it really is. But the Sabian symbols tell us this month that hope being renewed, second chances with things, and a revitalization of anything that was actually in place since April, coming back around. So the story of the Clinton Foundation and the new revelations of Uranium-1 and how that is bringing all of that back into light. And then Kevin Spacey reportedly being part of the Lolita Express. So we remember that the pedophile ring has been trying to break through bigger and bigger. We've seen this happen. This month says that things that were done in the dark that were coming out and then, got a little bit tamped down, will see some surface. They'll see some things coming to light. And then, as you were talking about when you were reading from that report, I don't even remember writing that report, but I don't remember them usually. I read them at the end of the day and I'm like, who wrote this? But Jupiter, next lunar month, the new moon is in Scorpio. And so Jupiter is in Scorpio now, as you mentioned, and having Jupiter and the sun, the solar month of Scorpio, it's just going to bring out just the depths, the underworld, just the ugliest of the ugly. That's Jupiter expands or balloons anything that it touches. Scorpio's underworld energy. It rules sex, the underworld, death, taxes, just things we don't want to see. And it rules positive things too, but all of the ugliness that's coming out is part of what Jupiter and Scorpio is going to do for the next year. And by the end of it, I believe that the psyche of the human consciousness, of the collective, is progressively going to be able to take on board where all this is going and the satanic network in place that's ruling and enslaving us, all really coming out. Which really goes, Phoenix, to what the Mahavidyas had told me in 2015, that it would be until 2020 before the bulk of the archonic energy would be off of the earth. We're at the midpoint of that right now. And so we've had this struggle since the beginning of the year I'm speaking of now, but really it's been a struggle that's been going on since 2012. Because 2012 is when basically it was archons broke loose. We were in an energetic that was just making all of that come up. And so we've been in a really hard fight for the truth, fighting the New World Order. Or we could say on the positive side, the same thing is just trailblazing into consciousness, the new paths. Because, when I struggle because I say things, and astrology has a polarity, a positive and a negative. While I talk about the negative, I always try to point us towards the positive, because we are empowered to be able to do whatever we want to do with the energy. And so I believe that as Jupiter continues through Scorpio, it's just going to be bringing it all up. And it's a process for people to be able to deal with it, because it's just really shocking where it kind of goes. But this is just part of that we're seeing. Yeah. So this month, revitalization in all things in your life, whatever is you had going that maybe kind of went to the wayside, this month should be bringing this up, and the full moon will bring it to a head.
Excellent.
Does that make
It makes a lot of sense. And that all of this, bringing it to a head, the good and the bad. And like Ney Sey was saying, and Laura herself, this information isn't being put out to scare anyone. It's to empower you, to let you know, to be aware of this. And it would probably be wise not to do, a lot of real public things this weekend in Atlanta. If you're listening in Atlanta or in that area, just be aware of this. And this is not saying it's going to happen like this. The historical replication of the patterns that Laura has seen are pointing to a high degree of probability of something happening there. Did I say that right?
Yes, and it really is just the astrology echoes what they're already saying. I mean, there's no secret, they're blasting this far and wide. And you know what gets me is these signs that they have, and you know they try to look all grassroots with their printed signs that are very expensive. You know, I always talk about that, but it's just like, oh, did they have a printed sign? Well, take a deeper look.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. They did that with the hands up, don't shoot protest that they tried to kick off everywhere. I was watching all these things and these different feeds. I'm like, wait a minute. I was looking at this live feed from Atlanta, this live feed from Orlando, this live feed from New York City, this live feed from Chicago, and they all had the same signs. And they were supposed to be like impromptu, you know, the citizens are rising up. They had these professionally printed signs that all said the same thing in every major city. Now, you couldn't see this on the mainstream media, but on the internet by different Periscope feeds and all these internet feeds, you could see this in real time. I'm like, yeah, this is bought and paid for.
You know, I'd say the cliche, you never plan to fail, you only fail to plan. And the powers that should not be, when they get into their meetings, they're not saying, hey, gentlemen, what are we going to do today to further our interest? They look at it by 10-year plans, 20-year plans, 100-year plans of what is their end result. And as we discussed it before, New World Order, total dominance, absolute power, I would think, yes.
Yeah, so this is a pivotal full moon because it's a full moon of the full moon month of the year. So it's like double full moon energy. It's like a double punch. So just in general, you know, even if you're not in one of these cities, you know, people will just be a little more agitated anyway. They're going to, you know, be a little edgy because that's what happens during a full moon energetic. A little bit of anxiety going on with that.
Yeah, well, the word lunatic.
I'm sorry.
The word lunatic comes from lunar. You know, it's a lunatic. It's lunation. It's been an observation of mankind for millennia that during full moons and full moon phases, people get a little loony, get a little crazy going.
And then if you add to it November, that's 9. November 4th, that's 9-4, which together equals 13.
True. Very true.
Well, you know, just while we just have, I guess, a few minutes left, I think maybe
10 minutes.
Well, you know, I just kind of wanted to read some of the Sabian symbols that were in place at the new moon, because that, you know, sets the tone for the whole month. And they're so positive. And just to reiterate the hopefulness within all of this, the new moon was at an airplane sails high in the clear sky. So that's just clear sailing. We're rising above. The sun, the Earth was located at, through imagination, a lost opportunity is regained. Chiron, a new moon, reveals that it's time for people to go ahead with their different projects. If you've been thinking about getting back with something or doing something, go to it. And then one that maybe applies for us tonight, Mars, a man gaining secret knowledge from an ancient scroll he is reading. So I guess this is kind of some secret knowledge that we're talking about. Certainly it's not widespread, you know. It's they've relegated astrology to, you know, the land of woo-woo, when it's absolutely the furthest thing from it. Again, because it's math. And just the wound, there's a wounding aspect in place this month with Chiron that Jupiter and Mercury were opposing the Chiron point at the new moon. And so that can really expand how we feel about ourselves and the pain that we've experienced in our lives. And so there's a processing of that happening this month to get us to be able to shift, because the Libra cycle of the year is the shift point, to help us align to be that airplane sailing high in the clear sky, so that we can rise above all of this Jupiter and Scorpio that's coming up. You know, when Jupiter was in Libra, that was about justice. That was everything's trying to rectify, and conspiracy and truth coming to light. Now with Jupiter and Scorpio, this is just about the depths, the ugliness, and the stuff that we really don't want to look at, that we're now going to have to look at, and that we're fully prepared to look at. So really my message is very positive. As far, I have not changed my opinion at all on the wisdom at all roads lead to liberty, and everything that's happening is leads us to freedom, and to the freedom that is sovereign to us. And so even when horrible events and tragic events happen, we understand that this is happening in order to get us to a better place. And I've always tried to, I guess, steer in that direction, that there's a plan in place, and that there's a method for it to happen, and there's nothing to fear. It's all rectifying. It's really the hardest thing, I think, to remember. But if you step back and look at it, it's going towards something better, even as dark as things look.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's the whole premise of the leveling that began the new Renaissance that began back in April, I believe, of 2015, and continues on. And I coined the word the leveling out just for myself. It's not like, hey, I came up with this word, but the term I called it was the leveling, where what is low is made high and what is high is made low. Things level out, and things will be rectified and corrected. But this entire process brings up the bad that to the surface so it can be exposed and dealt with. And it brings down those who have been high, those of assumed power, the few who control the many, who have had these high positions of power for such a long time. They're going to be brought down. But this all doesn't come without shaking. To level something out is a process that is movement, and high things drop down. They crash down. Towers fall. But in the process, that which has been suppressed down in the valley is lifted up to come higher. And it's not without problems. And to say it in, I guess, just in a phrase, this is going to leave a mark, people. This is going to leave a mark, but it will heal. It will.
Yeah, this purging is really what's happening. That's what, cleaning out of everything. And it's so much movement. It's a winnowing and leveling out. Yeah, shifting, and just redistributing the energy. So, I was talking with somebody about the structures that would, how would we know when structures had fallen and, that it was going to change? Well, I don't really believe that it's going towards a collapse. It's really a renaissance, a rebirthing of the good part of the value. And so we go back and find what's the value, what are the basic values, and then we build from that. And so, one of the things that I really wanted to bring up for a while is about when these things are happening, these events, like what happened in New York today, when this happens, we want to make sure we're balancing and keeping abreast of the information of all the stuff that's coming out, but not viewing it as this train wreck or a car accident when people voyeuristically can't turn away like at an accident. We don't want to be paralyzed by watching everything falling. We want to be focusing on our energy of what we want to be standing and ready and waiting and already in process. So the bulk of our energy should be on creating renaissance and devoting our resources that way, and not so much on an obsession with watching it fall, in my opinion.
I agree 100%. Do not get caught up in the negative. It's happening. We're going to see it. But don't stare at it. Don't transfix on it. Think on the good. How do we want to make things better? Because this is spiritual warfare. And if you are on the side of light and goodness, you have to concentrate on goodness and light and not be distracted by the darkness. Things may happen on your left side and your right side. It may appear the world's failing, and you can either get distracted and stop your forward movement and look at the left side or the right side, but concentrate forward. Know what's going on. Be aware of the dangers, the pitfalls, and what's happening, but strive for that higher point and that brighter light. We all have to, and that's how we're going to come out the other side of this.
not only come out of it, but be prosperous, and flourishing, because people will be turning once the fall, there's nothing else to see here. It's like, oh, well, then what? Well, all these things are already in play and have already been seeded out there and are ready, because that people will be coming. And I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. Whatever it is your thing is for, where you want to devote your energy as a truth warrior into Renaissance, do it. Take it back up. This month is the perfect time for that. We need leaders. We need to move within the true consciousness that we're living in. We are not living in that old paradigm. And the sooner we figure it out, the easier it's going to be.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're almost out of time, guys. Laura, I want to thank you so much for giving us this heads up. And it's exactly what it is. And everyone listening, make note of this. November 4th, and the astrocartography of Atlanta, Georgia, and the potential for a repeat of the energetics we saw in New York today. Is that a guarantee it will happen? No. It's an energetic heads up that there's a possibility, but this could happen anywhere. But concentrate on the highlights of this and the good things. Laura, thank you so much for joining us this evening and giving us this special alert. It's really appreciated.
Oh, thank you, Phoenix. It's always a pleasure. I really enjoy coming on, and so fun to chat with you too, NeSe.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. And as we always say, be the light if you can, because then when you're being the light, you might give something to those that are in the darkness. And a guiding light is always an opportune moment for everyone to find a good path.
Yeah, well said. And everyone can find Laura over at theoraclereport.com. Correct? Anything else to add to that, Laura, where people can contact you?
oraclereport.com, and there's a lovely group on Facebook, Oracle Report Facebook group that Andrew runs, and it's a great place. Really nice people hanging out there. So if you're on Facebook, check it out.
Oh, yeah. Shout out to Andrew. And oh, yeah. Anyway, Ney Sey, thank you, brother, for joining me this evening. Laura, thank you, sister, for joining me this evening. All of us, and the heads up, and to everyone out there, find someone you love and tell them that you love them. Say no to fear. Be aware of what's happening. Strive for the light, and know that you know in your heart that evil will not prevail, but goodness, love, and light will. And you're part of that. Rise up like the warrior you are inside of you and make this happen. It's up to me. It's up to you. It's up to all of us to concentrate on the good and say